Go. All right, so this is my hybrid technology. We're still using the laptop's mic, but we're using the headset's ears because William says the headset sounds crappy.
Yep. It did.
Wait, let's test yours again. You sound funny again. Let's test yours. Move up to
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's definitely working.
That's good.
It's probably because I'm listening through headphones, but yeah, no, it's definitely there. All right.
Okay.
So the fireworks keep happening, even though it's over.
Oh, really? Because I don't think
Yes.
ours are.
No, people keep setting off pop, pop. And it's really annoying because it really freaks out our cats. And in fact, Ezzy was on a hunger strike for like a week because of the fireworks. And it keeps doing it. And so tonight, the first night, it probably won't happen because there's a thunderstorm.
Yep.
And so Ezzy is still trying to parse out like what that means to her. Because it's still going boom, boom, but it's like different.
Right.
So, mixed blessing. But she started eating again and stuff, so she's doing okay, I guess.
Seems like your camera's better or something.
Well, I'm in a different room and there's more light.
Oh, okay.
It still looks pretty terrible to me, but it looks better, yeah, because there's light. Yeah, no, I'm now sitting in the chair where we normally would podcast.
Oh, okay, sure.
The other time I was sitting in the family room, which just has the one dim light that's fairly far away. Maybe I'll invest in a ring light. Nope.
I'll probably get a nicer camera eventually because I'm going to use it for other things.
2 weeks before, or maybe more than that, but just very recently before we all got laid off, my boss's boss bought a ring light so she would look better in our daily Zoom meetings.
Oh.
And it worked. She did look better, although she had glasses like me, so there was the reflection of the ring in each one, which I found weird. But yeah, these are my new headphones, and it's hard to tell on this camera, but they are purple, and they actually, this wasn't the plan, but they match my laptop, which is nice. Also learned today, I've talked about how my laptop is really slow because it has like a 1.3 gigahertz processor or something. And it's very hard to do more than one thing. I have found the actual limit. It can join a Google meeting, and then it pretty much can't do anything else during that. Because today I had to join a Google meeting, and while I was doing it, I couldn't even change the sound because for some reason it hadn't picked up the headphones, and it was still using the ones on here. And so I tried to change it, and like, nope. I had to leave the meeting, change it, go back in. Same menus, just they wouldn't respond when I was in the meeting.
Are you wearing your Thursday shirt still?
No, this is not Purple Thursday. This is, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't have no errands to run today. I haven't been wearing a shirt all day. I put one on like 10 minutes ago. But I was going to put on an orange shirt, and then I realized that's probably not good. So This is the one that I call my Miami Vice shirt. It has these weird sort of flower tree things. They're very stylized, and it looks very 80s to me.
Oh, it's not like that shirt you usually wear on Thursdays that had little daisies on it or something?
No, that's currently in the laundry. Yeah, some sort of flower. I don't know. Violets. I don't know.
It's a cool shirt, though.
What's your shirt?
It's just my NW shirt.
Okay. I could just see a little bit, so it looked like some sort of superhero logo, but clearly not Batman. So I was like, this is weird. This
is my superhero logo,
A&W. Better living through root beer. You're like the golden age version of Lil Sweet from Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, I never really thought about it like that.
But unlike Lil Sweet, you did not take second place in the first season of American Idol.
Wait, what?
That's Justin Guarini. It even says on the little bottom in small print, like, that's Lil Sweet.
He was in American Idol?
Yes, Kelly Clarkson won, and he came in second, and they were both a big enough deal that they got to make a rom-com movie called From Justin to Kelly that 4 people saw and apparently was terrible.
Well, I think those commercials are pretty funny.
No, I do love Lil Sweet as well, but I knew that you did, and then eventually I was like, holy crap, that's Justin Guarini.
Yeah.
He looks very different now.
Pretty funny.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Magical Talking Hat podcast, the only podcast in the world that is exactly like the Sklar Brothers podcast, except we're not twins. We're not professional comedians. Only one of us gives a shit about baseball. And I don't even know what their podcast is about. It's probably different than this.
Probably.
I'm Tony Sklar.
And I'm William, and this is episode 486.
Good work. Good work.
Had to remember there for a second.
Let me do the how we work thing, because now
Okay.
we're getting more listeners. Like, they're sneaking in places, so you never can tell these days. So I should explain how this podcast works.
Okay.
We have hats right off camera. It is magical in that it has its own email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. People, mostly people who listen, not always people who listen, gets weird that way. Good people, cool people, nice people, sexy people. Right into that email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com, with little notes, comments, topics, questions, things like that. The hat magically, on its own, transmogrifies the little emails into little note cards with the information written on them, and that manifests physically within the hat itself. It's very dissimilar to the Sklar Brothers servants, draw the note cards out of the hat at random, again, just off camera, read them on the air, talk about them till we're bored, do that for about an hour. That's the whole show, except the parts that aren't, which is almost all of it these days.
Yeah. We talk about a lot of stuff.
How many in your family did your family? How bad did your family get fined for 4th of July?
We got fined exactly $0.
Oh,
$0.
somebody, I can't remember where I've heard this story, but somebody, they did a thing in a cul-de-sac and they were doing illegal fireworks, and the sheriff showed up and they found out the fine was $652. And they decided they could split it amongst them, and they'd go ahead and do it anyway. Because there were like a bunch of houses.
Wow.
I'm going to go out on I don't remember the source of this story, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say all of them white. Just guessing.
Yeah, probably. That's a good guess, I think.
Anyway, so tell me about your 4th.
Well, we went down to the farm, and it's the first time we'd been to the farm all year, which is weird because we probably would have gone down 3 or 4 times before.
And we should discuss what precautions were taken during your time at the farm. I do not like this.
I would say none.
You didn't even keep distance. Y'all were hugging and crap.
See, that's what I'm thinking. No. See, that's what I'm trying to think.
Did you stay outside?
It seems like we did,
bathroom?
but it. Oh yeah, we were outside almost the entire time.
All right. And did you keep distant from different family groups?
I mean, it seems like we did, but I don't remember anyone sort of making a thing out of it. But it seems like, yeah, we did. I don't remember getting that close to anybody. Well, except my dad's wife insisted we get our picture taken, and we were all sort of like next to each other then, but not like face to face, you know. And it was just for a little bit. Click pictures.
That's
but other
probably
than that,
not good, but all right.
Well, I mean, it seems like we were usually not that close to each other. Although, I mean, as a family, it's not really that common for us to, that's not really our thing to get right up next to each other all
You
the
aren't
time
huggy
anyway.
people or whatever.
No, not really. So that's why I'm having a hard time, because it's like, well, we don't usually, and we were outside, and I mean, I think kind of as a rule, we almost spend most of our time pretty far away from each other. That's kind of weird now that I think about it.
So you're a socially distant family just in general. All right.
Kind of.
That's nice.
Kind of. No, but
That's
yeah,
handy and also sad.
I don't know. I mean, if you're used to that, that's, it doesn't bother
Oh
you.
no, it's sad to me. I assume it's not sad to you. I'm sad. I'm like, aw, William's family.
No, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I don't think anyone was particularly thinking about any kind of precautions like that.
I'm disappointed in you.
I mean, sorry.
Like,
But
I fully believe the rest of your family wouldn't think about it. I feel like y'all should have been the torchbearers for this.
You're possibly right about that. Yeah, you're possibly right that we would have been the ones to say, hey, we should whatever. But I mean, like I said, it's the social distancing aspect is almost baked in, so I didn't really think about that. But anyhow, so we went.
I'm nowhere near you, so it's fine with me. I'm not the one who's gonna be shitting himself.
I mean, the only person that I think most of us have had it. I just saw a news report today that said that getting reinfected is probably not a thing.
Yeah, but your belief that you've explained to me as to why you think you've had it is super shaky.
Well, I mean, it's not based on.
And for the record, how many of your family have actually tested positive?
Right. It's not based. None of it's based on someone well, we wouldn't have tested positive. We would have had to test for like antibodies or whatever. So nobody has tested positive for it. My father hasn't had it. His wife hasn't had it, as far as we know.
That's good, because they're the ones that could very well die from it.
Exactly. Now, my sister is a healthcare worker, and she's pretty concerned about it. And she's the one that really talked Dad and his wife into staying home. They haven't been going to church, and she didn't seem. So when you said that I presume my wife would have been the torchbearers, really she would be, because
No, that's true.
She's really kind of pushed all of that even more than my wife or I have had a chance to. She didn't seem overly concerned with how things were going. So I don't know. I hope
it works well for you.
I guess before we went, I mean, I was thinking about what we would do. And like I said, I think just as a matter of course, after all this time, you just get used to keeping distant from people. So maybe I was just doing it sort of out of habit, and everybody else was too. I don't know. Honestly, I didn't give it a lot of thought while I was there. So I don't know about that aspect, really. Yes, I hope so too. I mean, I'm mostly concerned again about Dad, that Dad, in the next couple weeks doesn't come down with symptoms or whatever.
And I mean, death is a thing, but I've also, now that I've known a few people that have had it and gotten through it, I have heard some terrible stories. I really a lot don't want it.
No, I hope you don't get it, because
it can be really shitty for people, even ones that, don't have to be hospitalized and they get through it. Like, as one friend said, it is definitely way worse than any flu I've ever had.
Right. So anyway, we went down there, and it was like, a lot of times we'll get there sometime before lunch. We'll have lunch there and we'll leave. In the summertime, it'll be well before dark. But of course, this time we were going to shoot off fireworks. So we had to be there past 9 o'clock or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we got there a little later. And we did all kinds of stuff. Even though it was hot outside, it wasn't too bad. So we spent all this time outside, and we did a whole bunch of outside activities and things. But then when it got dark and it was time to shoot off fireworks, it was really cool because there was a full moon that night too.
Oh.
Which, at my house, it's pretty flat where I live. And so the moon, when it comes up, it's really big and orange and stuff. So that was really cool. But also, you can see the fireworks that a lot of the surrounding communities are doing all around. So like north of us, you could see Pleasantville's fireworks, and just south and a little west of us, you could see Melcher Dallas fireworks, and Knoxville's fireworks was, this direction. So all around, you could see all these fireworks shows going off in all these surrounding communities while we were shooting our fireworks off. So it was pretty cool.
Nice.
And so we shot off our fireworks, and they were awesome. We had a couple mishaps, but they didn't hurt anybody or anything. And so yeah, it was really awesome. And then afterwards, the moon was still up, and it was still big and orange and beautiful. And it was just kind of nice to enjoy that because, when I was growing up, as long as it was clear, just about every month when there was a full moon, and sometimes twice a month, you would see it. And it was gorgeous. And it was just part of your life to see it. And since I've been an adult and I take day trips down to the farm, I'm not often there at night, even if it is going to be a full moon. So I often maybe only see it driving home or whatever. So, it really brought back a lot of childhood memories to sort of be there when the moon was coming up. And out there also, when it's a full moon, it's almost like daytime. It's so bright and it lights everything up. And we used to sometimes, when there was a full moon, spend all night outside. I don't know. It was just really, there was just a huge, nostalgic sort of sentimental feeling behind it all. Plus having the cool fireworks, plus having everybody together for the first time all year, plus having fireworks going on all around. It was a pretty amazing moment actually for me, and having my wife there, because she doesn't get to experience that very often either.
For those watching on YouTube, that face I made was not in response to William's story. It was because Ezzy was climbing down my leg and she has dagger claws. So you were like, the family was all together, and I was like, yeah. And I just wanted to make sure people knew, that was not in response to that.
Well, in other words, my 4th of July my 4th of July was awesome. And, aside from again, hopefully in the next week, my father will continue to be in good health and everyone else will. And so it won't be such a big deal that we maybe weren't as careful with the social distancing as we could have been. But now keep in mind though, too, that, we all knew that none of us had symptoms, I don't go anywhere. So I knew I hadn't had symptoms at least for 2 weeks since the last time I went anywhere. So I didn't really have any reason to think that I had it.
No, I would think your sister would be the scary one.
Yeah, and everyone else also had been sort of not going anywhere and self-quarantining, and none of them had had any symptoms in the last couple of weeks. So we didn't have a lot of reason to think any of us were going to give it to anybody. And like you said, my sister, who is a healthcare worker, she would know what precautions she's taken and whether or not. So I think we're probably all fine. But what about you? You did something for 4th of July too.
Yes, we went over to my youngest sister-in-law's backyard, and all the families, except the ones who lived in South Carolina, came together. But we did keep distant, and we're real sort of careful about that. Only went inside to use the bathroom. And
where's this again? Is this in Illinois?
Yes, this is in a town called Peoria Heights. Mm-hmm. And we ended up spending 5 hours there, and only came back because we would get home before dark, because I didn't want the cats to be without us when shit really went down, because it got crazy. The purge. But it was a great time. That morning, one of my sister-in-laws had sent out a thing. My niece has been very anxious about all the COVID stuff, and they basically requested, can we try and minimize talking about that during this? And we were all like, sure. And so we spent a lot of time not talking. We still managed to talk about it in bits and pieces, because it's sort of impossible not to if you're talking about your life at this point. But very minimal, and we talked about other stuff, and it was really fun, and we all had a good time. My niece and my nephew are now at an age where they can just participate in the grown-up conversations, because they're 13 and 15 now. So my family is now indoctrinated enough that my whole family essentially can sit around and have a talk about D&D. I love that. So that was, we had a great time there too. Yeah. And little potential contaminant happened, just a tiny bit. I'm sitting there next to my wife, and unbeknownst to me, my mother-in-law had handed something to my wife, who handed it to me, and it was a $5 bill. And Trish said something about, looks like being a homemaker is still earning you some income. And I was like, sweet. And then my mother-in-law said, no, that's not what that's for. That's for lost peanut whatever. And I was like,
told me to remind you of this.
Lost peanut despair? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I listened to the podcast. So this is for the Lost Peanut Despair Fund. And it was good timing because I had lost one just the other day and I was stuck. But this allowed me to buy more peanuts. So, no, and so she listens, which is hilarious because didn't know my mother-in-law listened. Not sure all the episodes are ones that she would want to listen to. I don't like. I mean, I don't want to say she can't. Pam, if you're listening, listen, whatever. But like, might not have planned on you listening for each one. Like, may not have taken that into consideration when I talked about things. So that's a new wrinkle in the podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be fun. Because like my parents say they listen. I'm like, yeah, you listen like 3 times, whatever. But every once in a while, I keep getting surprised, and I get surprised at former coworkers and stuff who listen too. So
cool.
You speak in, and we're putting it on the internet. And I mean, needs to be shit I wouldn't regret saying in front of people. So I guess there you go. So how was your week otherwise?
I mean, that's the biggest deal. I mean, we did watch some stuff. Like we watched Motherless Brooklyn, and it was not good. Did
you watch Disclosure yet?
Oh no, I keep forgetting.
Why do you hate me?
I don't. There's just a whole list of things that we're already sort of.
By the time you watch it, I'm gonna forget what it was.
No, you won't. I mean, we watched, and then some show will come up, and then that we're waiting on, and then we'll binge it. Of course, not even really planning to. That's just what happens. Like, what was the last one we binged? Hannah came back, and we binged that, but that was a couple weeks ago. But there was one this past week we watched. Now I don't remember which one it was. But then we still get discs from Netflix, and we feel like we have to watch those right away to send them back so we can get new ones. And
even my mom doesn't get those anymore.
Yeah, we get them still.
They have whole warehouses open just because of you. You are screwing up their overhead.
But it's like we watch all this stuff, and then by the time we podcast, I forget what a lot of it was. Sometimes because it's not very good, whatever it was. And sometimes because I don't know if anyone, like Hannah, we watched season 1 and we just watched season 2, and we like it, but I don't have anything really to say about it. Just that we like it. So what can you say?
Did I tell you?
Want to watch?
I'm sorry.
I was going to say we kind of want to watch Warrior Nun or whatever on Netflix.
I want to watch Warrior Nun. I don't know. I think Trish and her sister may start watching it. They watch stuff while we're podcasting because they're really into it. But I'm like, I kind of want to watch it too. So
we did see the first episode and it was okay. I haven't heard.
It seems like they're trying. I've heard very mediocre things, but it also sounds like they're really trying to be Buffy.
Oh, really?
That's what I've heard.
I mean, the special effects and stuff in it were quite good. I mean, it was very cinematic, and I did not like it. I mean, the first episode was okay, but it was a first episode, right? There's not a lot of information there, and you're kind of like, I mean, I was interested in watching the next one. Let me put it that way. Oh, I know what we watched. We watched Unsolved Mysteries.
I've heard it's interesting, the new version. Some of the mysteries are already getting solved, and it's still scary enough you shouldn't watch it before you go to sleep.
Well, it is creepy. It's pretty creepy, yeah. And the opening credits are really creepy. Like they made the opening credits extra creepy. And there's even at the very end when the title comes up, they've got this almost ghostly image of what's his name that used to host it.
Robert Stack.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this little image of him. It's like, oh, Robert Stack is still watching you.
The ghost of Robert Stack.
I mean, he passed away, right? He's not.
Yeah, no, he did. That's definitely his ghost. Yeah, that's not. People say it's just like a artifact on the film, but that is 100% Robert Stack's ghost.
Well, one of the episodes
might be the title of this episode. I don't know.
One of the episodes,
not just Robert Stack's ghost, though. 100% Robert Stack's ghost.
Right. One of the episodes didn't seem like an unsolved mystery. It seemed like they were pretty sure they knew who did it, but they couldn't prove it. So they wanted it. They wanted people to call in about that.
Those happened back in the day. Those happened before.
And then there was one about people who were claiming to have been abducted by aliens. There was one of those.
There's only one? Wow.
See, I didn't really watch this show. I thought it was all about unsolved murders where they didn't even have any idea who it was.
No. There was a lot of Ripley's bullshit in there and cryptids.
There was?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
D.B. Cooper type crap and yeah.
Really?
It was a healthy mix of all of them.
How come I never?
Could this be? That's the worst Robert Stack impression ever. Could this be the living photo of Bigfoot's wife?
Wait, was this a 90s show?
80s, I believe.
Well, I was like late 80s, like really late, like 88, 89 kind of thing.
I said 80s, I believe. What makes you think I could specify it down to a certain part of that decade? I'm not even committed to that decade.
I just don't know how I missed it. I mean, my mom would have watched it. If I was home, I would have seen it. I am familiar with it, and it seems like I've seen episodes, but not like sitting at home watching them. I don't remember that.
Yeah, but you famously are not plugged into the zeitgeist.
That's true.
Just in life.
I just know this is a show.
Nobody else is watching shit about Oak Island.
Yes, they are. My dad and my brother.
Yeah. Family so doesn't count. Where do you think you get it from?
That's probably where I get it. But I mean, was this a network show? Do you remember that?
NBC, I think it was NBC.
So there's no way my mom didn't watch this show, and I would have watched it with her. But I don't know.
Maybe she thought it was too creepy for you.
No, they didn't care about that. I mean, we just watched whatever. My parents didn't really. I mean, they would talk to us about something. If something was controversial or whatever, they might talk to us about. But think about like Family Ties. We watched that, and there was like tons of stuff.
No, but that
was really.
That was the 80s, and they didn't know any better, and most of that was very special episodes. No, that was supposed to be family broadcasting.
Right, but it addressed some pretty heavy issues for young kids.
Yeah, they could not stop having very special episodes on family. Heavy shit on there.
All right, well, anyway, what about your week? You probably have stuff to talk about.
Hold on, I'm looking up.
You're looking something up? Do we do that now?
Well, because you're...
because of the untold or unsolved mysteries.
Originally, yeah. Okay. The show, which documents and seeks to solve cold cases and paranormal phenomena, originally ran from 1987 to 2010.
Okay. Well, 1980. If it started in the fall of 1987, that would have been when I started college. So, and I didn't have.
You never looked at a TV again until 2015. I didn't have a television when I went home, I think I've said this, when I went home, sometimes I'd stay with my brother. Because remember I told you that when I first started going to school, I didn't go home very often. Yes.
When I did start going home, I wouldn't go home. I'd go to stay with my brother Scott somewhere. And the only reason I didn't do that to begin with was because at first he lived with a whole bunch of other guys and it was all crowded in his apartment. But at some point, probably in my second year of college, he had his own place where he was only rooming with one other person. So then I could go home and room with him and then ride with him down to the farm if I needed to or whatever. And when I was staying with him, he would sometimes show me we would either watch movies or he would show me something he had recorded, like South Park or The Simpsons or something.
Yeah, like an episode of Simpsons that you swore I already talked to you about.
Right. But aside from that, for pretty much the entire decade of the 90s and kind of until like 2004, I didn't see television. I wasn't watching TV. I didn't see any 90s television really at all unless he showed me something, which was not that often. So I didn't, if I saw
So you missed Friends and Seinfeld?
Yep.
I know a remarkable number of people who missed Friends and Seinfeld, which I just find shocking.
He might have shown me an episode or two, and I don't know how I ever saw any Unsolved Mystery episodes, but I did. Maybe he showed me those two.
There were 6 seasons after you started watching TV again.
Well, but when I started watching TV again in like 2004, I wasn't watching it on network. I was watching it online, or I was renting DVDs that had TV shows in them and stuff. I didn't start watching like on the television probably until 2010, I want to say.
So basically you killed Robert Stack. That's what I'm getting from this.
So that's why because it didn't start until after I left home. And then there was I worked at Sears in the electronics department, and I sold televisions, and people would ask me, well, what do you have at home? Because they thought, I'll buy whatever the salesperson owns. And I didn't have one. So I had to.
And they were like, oh my God, you're one of those people.
No, what happened whenever this happened.
Oh yeah. If I had been like in the late 90s, early 2000s, come in to buy a TV and you were the salesperson and I was like, what TV do you own? And you were like, I don't know. I would have punched you in the face.
This was the late 90s. This was in like 96 and 97. I was working at Sears. That's where I got my Santa outfit, because they eventually sold. They had a Santa outfit there for some reason, and when they wanted to get rid of it, they sold it to me for like $8. But anyhow,
yeah, I think you might have got scammed on that. I've seen that outfit.
Hey, it's a good Santa outfit. What are you talking about?
I think $8 might have been a bit high.
It's a good outfit. Anyway,
Scrawny Claus.
Every single time someone asked me, well, what TV do you have? And I told them I didn't have one. Every single time they said, well, what do you do? They didn't like criticize me for not having one.
And that's the difference. Punch me in the face. They just asked, I wouldn't care what you did. I would just punch you.
But isn't that funny that they asked that question? Like, you mean other than watching television?
Not at all.
You wouldn't naturally think of reading a book or going outside or having a conversation with someone?
In the 90s and to a lesser extent in the 80s, that's what you did. That's what huge swaths of the American population did, is just watch stuff.
But it's interesting to me that, I often did think every single time, I don't know why I didn't learn, but every single time I thought when I told them I didn't have one, they'd sort of give me the business about it, but they never did. Or punch me in the face.
You're lucky you didn't ever run into me.
They went immediately to asking what I do with my time.
No, it was pity. It was pity, I think. They're like, you poor thing. No, to me, that's like if you're my server at a freaking barbecue joint and I'm like, well, what's the best thing? And you're like, oh, I'm a vegan. Like, I punch you in the face. You're selling electronics at Sears. You don't own a TV. You're spitting on me and everything I stand for.
But I also didn't own.
You're a disgrace to this company.
I also didn't own
this
a sewing machine. I also didn't own a sewing machine, and I sold those.
I would punch you in the face for that too.
Pretty much, I
would have beat the crap out of you in the 90s, just constantly.
I also sold. I also sold vacuum cleaners, which I did own a vacuum cleaner.
I was going to say, this is a new level.
And I sold computers.
I sold beds, slept on the ground under a tree in somebody's yard.
I sold telephones.
I sold food, haven't eaten since 1956.
I sold telephones that I didn't own that kind of telephone.
I sold bottled water, and I'm actually a cactus.
I sold home theaters. I didn't have one of those.
Okay. I thought we were doing a bit. Now I realize we're just doing the most boring conversation ever put to podcasting here.
I don't know if I like that job or not. Seems like I liked it okay. I mean, it was a job. And then I applied to where we worked on a lark because
I remember.
the person I was with.
Paul went to do it, and you were like, why not?
I mean, yeah, I was sitting there doing nothing else. And then they didn't even call him back. They called me. So that was pretty.
They were like, that looks like a guy who doesn't own a TV. We want him.
Well, I didn't. But that's kind of when I started getting back into because I was watching TV that was on DVDs or whatever, and we were playing, and I got the PS2 then, so we were playing video games. We were using the PS2 to play DVDs on it, and so that's what started it all, was getting that PS2 and playing DVDs and things. And then I kind of got back into watching television and movies too, because I didn't go to a lot of movies in the 90s either, so I had a lot of catching up to do. And then after I did, I was not impressed. I mean, I was like, wow, I didn't really miss anything in the 90s, because they're just about it. The whole 90s sucked.
Every time a story of your younger days doesn't include the word Rumspringa, I'm just amazed.
Yeah. I didn't listen to a lot of music in the 90s either.
Okay.
So.
Not to be a broken record, if you know what a record is, like those people think, but what did you do? You don't read. You weren't listening to music. You weren't watching movies. You weren't watching TV.
I do too read.
So most the 90s, you just read nonfiction for a decade.
Pretty much, yeah. Most of these books I purchased and read in the 90s, almost all.
That's so terrifying, and also explains so much.
Yeah. That's, well, and
you
then,
just read nonfiction for the 90s.
Well, yeah. There was plenty to read. Good, interesting things.
Wow.
And I also tried to write articles and stuff based on, and I participated in like online forums and stuff talking about some of this stuff, which you know how that went. I mean, even if I was on a good online forum, it wasn't good for very long. Some troll would come along and
forums are super evil.
So, but yeah, I read a lot in the 90s, but it was not all of it. I read some fiction, but I don't remember what. But I know I did a little bit, but not a lot.
That was pretty much your lost decade, I think.
Yeah. Well, but every time I go back, it's like, oh, well, I mean, I've caught up, like some things that I sort of caught up on for the 90s was I did watch Voyager and I thought it was great. I watched Xena and I thought it was great. I didn't think Buffy was very great. But I watched a lot of 90s things that I liked, but there was a lot of 90s things that I didn't like. So it's like no loss really for me. But now the 90s, wasn't that kind of your decade that you...
I mean, I would have been... In 1990, I would have turned 13.
Oh, well, yeah, there you go.
So my adolescence was the 90s.
And college, the whole thing, right?
I still consider that part of my adolescence, but yeah. Yeah, 13 to 23, so.
Yeah.
My formative years were the 90s. It was a great decade. We thought we had become so enlightened off of the 80s.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I've talked about this many times. The 90s was when we finally started addressing things like racism and sexism and homophobia. And our version of addressing those things was just talking a lot about them and presenting them a lot. And whether or not we said the right things or presenting horrible stereotypes was not the issue. It was just that they were out there. And that's how we got things like every different racial demographic got their own sketch comedy show for a little while. And I mean, that's when we started getting women's television that was terrible. And yeah, no, the 90s was when we realized all our systemic social problems and talked about the fact that we realized them. We didn't do anything about them, but we started talking about them a lot.
Or somewhere in the 90s was supposed to be the year of the woman and everything. That was what, 92
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah. That was when we all got into recycling. That was when all of us that weren't in Southern California stopped doing cocaine. That was when we got into meth instead. Yeah. Get a lot more done on meth.
Well, I know that I was young in the 70s because, when the 80s, I was 11 years old when the 80s started, but I don't think of myself as an 80s person. I think of myself as a 70s person. And, when I think of the 70s,
I agree. I think of you as a person in your 70s. I always have.
when I think of the 70s, I think of it as a time like what you're talking about, where there's progress and people are trying to get better and, they're trying to address civil rights things. And then when the 80s came, it seemed,
we locked shit down.
Yeah, even to me, it seemed regressive. And
Yeah.
the more I've learned about the 80s, sort of as an adult, looking at it as history, because when I was going through it as a kid, I didn't notice a lot of things, but it was even worse than I perceived it to be, really.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I've learned. Maybe someone can enlighten me to something different. But the 80s was just not. It's like all the stuff that happened in the 70s and the 80s, people were like, yeah, let's forget all that progressive stuff.
And I mean, it was the Reagan era, so that makes sense. But yeah, it's the swinging pendulum. The 60s was much more locked down. The 70s went wild. The 80s tried to lock things down again. The 90s went wild poorly. And then we've kind of just been going wild since then.
So what do you
think we had 9/11, so that helped. That calmed us down.
Calmed us down. I guess, if you look at it in a particular way, I think it broke a lot of people.
Sorry. By calmed us down, I mean made us very serious-minded and paranoid again.
Oh, okay.
We gave up on, acceptance and love and tolerance and stuff. We were like, fuck all y'all.
Yeah, I think that did kind of happen to a lot of people.
And I think what we're just describing essentially is the different, now that I think about it, it's just the different presidential eras.
I feel like, though, that
Nixon broke the 60s. And then the 70s, you got to be wild and crazy, and you had Carter and all that. And then Reagan held on to the 80s very tightly. And then the 90s was Bill Clinton, which was just a blast all around. I mean, our biggest issue was him getting a blowjob from an intern, which was horrible, and the man's probably a rapist. But at the time, it was fun and sexy and crazy and wasn't serious. Nobody's life was dying from that because we didn't talk about Kosovo and Bosnia and all that jazz. And then the 2000s was 9/11, so then it was very serious again. But then we got Obama, and then that was all cool and awesome, and racism was solved and all that. And now the world is just on fire.
I feel like through all of that I really, it feels like I sort of maintained a sort of 70s sensibility that was very closely tied to Jim Henson and Sesame Street. Like, I never let go of that mood. Or another thing it might be connected to, because something else I saw was what's that movie with Tom Hanks playing Mr. Rogers? We saw that.
Oh, Won't You Be My Neighbor, I think.
Yeah, but it was okay. He was good in it. But it did remind me a lot of that sort of mood that was prevalent during my childhood. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain for a person that didn't live through it. And I know a lot of people say, oh yeah, I grew up with Sesame Street, but I'm not sure that Sesame Street was quite the same after Jim passed away. But maybe the things I'm about to talk about were the same, because when you watch Sesame Street in the 70s, probably the 80s was, in the 80s was true too. They would teach you Spanish words, that was sort of.
Oh, cerrado.
Well, I'm just saying you were aware that there was an important demographic in the United States that didn't speak English. And that was okay, There was great representation in terms of the human beings in the show, and that made sense. But also the characters who weren't human but weren't like Bert and Ernie, for example, right? I mean, somehow uh, something about the way they were designed and the way they interacted still gave this sort of impression of diversity, right? Like it didn't matter if you were a person or not a person. It didn't matter if you were purple or blue or green. You know, all of these things just really reinforced. I mean, they were teaching letters and numbers and stuff, but they were also teaching this idea that we all have, even if we're different, we've got so many things in common and that's more important, the things we have in common.
And you don't think they teach that anymore on Sesame Street?
I mean, I'm sure they do, but I just don't know what the mood is like. Like when I watched it when the kids were little, it just felt completely different. And it's not that they didn't have a diverse cast and all this stuff. It's just that there's, I don't know, it seemed a lot more focused on the teaching the numbers and letters part. I don't know. I feel like that whole, we're one big world and the things we have in common are more important than the things that divide us. Although that's another thing, is the things that made us different was all those were also cool, right? It's like Sesame Street didn't erase the individual aspects or the different cultural aspects. It said, wow, look at this difference between these two people. Isn't that cool? But also,
yeah, no, this is the Sesame Street I grew up with as well. I just hadn't heard that it changed.
Well, it just didn't feel the same to me when I was watching it with the kids in the
which 100% makes sense. However, objective and observant you try to be, there's no way childhood you's feelings towards Sesame Street are the same as adult you. And as much as you try and separate, this is a kid thing, this is an adult thing, it's just never going to happen. I spent years genuinely hating Elmo.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm not.
And now that I'm older, I still kind of hate him, but I'm like, other than his voice being high and possibly a little grating, he's doing the same shit that Muppets did when I was a kid. But he was new, and he got way too much attention, and I didn't like it.
Well, here's another thing, and maybe this is part of what I was experiencing as the difference, is that it seemed like, okay, so Jim Henson was doing this and Sesame Street was doing this, but it seemed like everything was doing it. It seemed like everything I was watching or experiencing, and not just say Mr. Rogers, because that was part of it too.
That I'll give you. I mean,
but it seemed like sitcoms were teaching these same lessons and messages. It seemed like the nonfiction stuff, like the documentaries I was watching, was talking about these things. You'd watch All in the Family, and it would deal with these things directly. Oh
yeah, no, as a television and movies and stuff, there's definitely been a shift over the decades, without a doubt.
Yeah. So I guess when I was,
of course, that's true. Yeah.
When I was watching it with the kids, then when we'd watch something else, it'd be like, maybe that was the thing, was like, the whole world isn't supporting what Sesame Street's doing anymore. Some of it's
which is why people then get mad at Sesame Street, and some politicians want to defund Sesame Street, and that's why HBO had to buy it and all that shit. Sociopolitical views change over decades. I mean, it just happens, and shows tend to reflect that.
I have heard about Sesame Street like dealing with really heavy issues, which they've always done. Like even early on, they dealt with divorce and things like that.
And now they've got an autistic character, a refugee character. I forget what else. They've been bringing in some cool ones,
which is fantastic, and it really does go along with its very deep heritage, I think, and that's great. But it seems like back in the day, it seemed like it was part of a larger narrative that everyone was kind of participating in.
Yeah.
And then they were alone. It seemed like maybe Mr. Rogers and maybe say Electric Company or something, but just about every other aspect of media wasn't participating in that conversation.
Because the mainstream social view had changed, without a doubt.
I'm sorry. I don't know how we got talking about this. I feel bad for hijacking everything, because you didn't really talk about your week.
No, and a lot of stuff happened.
You're not going to talk about it now?
I have to talk about it quick. It's important stuff.
Well, yeah, talk about it.
So I love the video game Control. Good game.
Did you quit?
Sort of.
You talked about quitting last week.
It just it hit that thing where I'm like, it feels like a chore now. I'm not enjoying playing it.
Yeah.
But I absolutely needed to know what was going to happen and see the stuff. So I went online, and you can do this with a lot of games nowadays. On YouTube, I found playthroughs for it, and I watched the whole rest of the game and the whole DLC for it. And it's really awesome. And I'm so glad I didn't have to play through it. Holy shit. This is the perfect 100%. Like, this person played it a whole bunch and then just recorded, like, they knew everything that happened. So, like, they'd cut left and there's a secret room. I'm like, that, you don't just instantly find that. And there were still fights where, like, they almost died. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know how. But it's really good. And it's gonna take a long time because it's not even out yet, but they are gonna have a second DLC. And when that happens, I'm going to wait until somebody records a version of it and watch that too, because it was really cool. I really liked it a lot. Huh. But yeah, I stopped playing it. I went through my library of games and found games that seemed like pleasant and not difficult and things like that. And I found a few and I installed them and I started playing Rime, Rime.
I saw that.
Have you played Rime?
Yes.
All right. I thought you probably had. If not, you definitely should have. And I played that for a little while. And it's really cheery, and the puzzles are really cool, and it's gorgeous. It's just really boring to me. I feel terrible because it's like that was exactly what I was saying I needed was that game. And I was bored. So I bit the bullet. Well, recently they had some really good COVID sales on Sony, on PlayStation. So I bought a few things, which I'm excited about. But the main thing is I finally bought and installed Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Okay.
And I was worried that it's too soon from the last time, but I'm like, this is gameplay I know I love. Like, these are some of my favorite games. And I started it earlier this afternoon. And I set the difficulty to super easy. And there's a thing in this version now where you can have a more immersive experience where it doesn't have as much stuff on the HUD. And, like, you have to find... I did not pick that option.
Okay.
I picked the option that tells me everything.
Okay. And
I set a thing that's called Aim Assist all the way as far as it would go. I don't actually know what it does, but I'm like, fucking easy. I want this easy. And so far it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
And I picked the female character. They finally, for real, this Assassin's Creed is very different from the others. You get to pick, play as a male, play as a female, and not like there's twins or anything. Genuinely, when you're going to, like, go into the Animus, it's like, oh, there's 2 samples of DNA we have here. You'll have to pick which one's memory you want to go into. And you get to, it's a boy or a girl. And I wonder how it works, because in this one, I picked the girl, and the boy is my baby brother. And I wonder if you did it as the boy, if you just switched positions entirely, and it became your baby sister. Because I have it's not like we hang out together and you could just sort of switch to whoever was going to do it. Like, there's very broad differences in age. I haven't figured out that he's dead yet, but he's either going to be dead or he was kidnapped and raised as a bad guy or something. I'm confident based on the little flashbacks I'm having. But I just started, and yeah, it's good stuff. It's stuff I'm familiar with. It's nice. It's easy. It's gentle. It's gorgeous. Their version of Greece is gorgeous. So that's good. So I'm happy about that. It's been a very good week for me as writer / homemaker. Back at the gym. 4 times so far. Tomorrow's going to make 5.
Great.
I'm super loving it. And there's lots of easy social distance. There's still some young people out on the weights that are like hopping between machines a little much and like not wiping down between. So I haven't gone to the weightlifting yet. I'm sort of trying to figure out the schedule, and I may find the day when like they're not there and do it. But mostly it's about the cardio and the floor work anyway. And I'm doing that stuff, and it's great. It hurts, very sore for really low level crap. I'm very sore already, but you know, that's a good start to it. I finished the edits on Odd Wings, so now I'm gonna be doing the final draft. Got a little sad because finished, and my father had written longer notes about things, and at the end he's like, "I really love this. If you wanna like call me up, and I still have a copy, so we could go over like specific chapters or something if you wanted to." And I was like, "We can't because you did," and that's just because I took too long, and so I was sad. And then the next day, I comforted myself / felt worse by realizing that had I started earlier, I totally wouldn't have wanted to do that with him anyway. So I'm like, so it never would have happened because I'm a terrible son anyway, so that's fine. But yeah, so getting started on that. Looking into some other weird, more commercial writing opportunities that I don't want to talk about just yet, because it's going to involve me sneaking into places and convincing people of things before the trend hits. I don't know. I'm going to be pitching things to people, and I don't want to leak things out at this point. But somebody I used to work with sent me some stuff discussing this as a thing that she thought would work well with my writing and possibly get me both exposure and some money. So I'm working on that. And in the process, discovered online writers' workshops and writers' communities.
Right.
Which, of course, are a thing, but it had never occurred to me before. And found a couple really interesting ones that basically I'm going to join as soon as I'm done with writing Odd Wings and just selling it as soon as I finish this last draft. Because Odd Wings is too far along to be like trying to get more critiques and stuff like that. That I just need to finish that, and I don't need distractions. But after that, there are these groups, and yeah, you post your writing and people critique it, and you critique other people's writing, and it's very cool looking. I'm very excited about that too. The house is getting cleaner, slowly but surely. Things are happening in that front. So yeah, I'm having a real good time with this staying at home thing. Could be cooler. That would be nice.
Yeah, it's pretty hot.
And it's gonna be this weekend, so that's good. And last night, we, having never seen it before, finally watched Hamilton. On a Disney Plus. Have you watched Hamilton yet?
We don't have Disney Plus, so.
Oh, I thought you did because you saw Mandalorian, didn't you? Or have you still not seen Mandalorian?
I was at my sister's house and I saw a couple episodes, which I really liked, and I want to see it, but no, we haven't seen it.
We finally did Hamilton. Trish and I both kind of didn't want to like it because there's just so much hype, you know?
Yeah.
But it's really good. It's really good. I have some weird feelings about how it handled its female characters. It did not do well by them, but I'm torn in between, like, just problematic characterization, or it did not do well by them and is intentionally making that a message that, like, that was the point. And the answer is probably a little bit of both, but there's a couple of places where it's a little bit weird, but otherwise it's amazing. The performances are incredible. The music's incredible. The staging's incredible. And then, funnily enough, today on YouTube, I watched a portion of a video of Drunk History, which, you know, I love Drunk History. And it was about Alexander Hamilton. But the person who was drinking and telling the story was Lin-Manuel Miranda. And the people acting it out, Aaliyah Shawkat from Arrested Development and Search Party was playing Alexander Hamilton, and Aubrey Plaza was playing Aaron Burr.
That'd be funny. Yeah.
And it wasn't the part where they were dueling, but Aaron Burr was they. I didn't know jack about Alexander Hamilton before this, except died in a duel with Aaron Burr. He and Aaron Burr knew each other for decades and were essentially friends, and like shit happened. But yeah, it's great. And some of the I think on the Apple Tunes I'm gonna get the soundtrack because there's some really good songs in there.
Cool.
So highly recommend it if you've got Disney Plus. It is 2 hours and 40 minutes. So prep for that. But it's good. I think that's mostly it. Did I talk before about how we're watching Perry Mason?
Nope.
Oh my God, we're watching Perry Mason. Only bits at a time because it's coming out on HBO, so there have been 3 episodes so far. I hate watching it hardcore. It is such trash. It's amazing.
We just watched the first episode, and I think that was enough for us.
Oh, no kidding. It's so bad. Everyone is terrible and stupid, and especially Perry Mason.
Well,
his morals make no sense, and he's a shitty investigator. They keep talking about him being a good investigator. He is not. He is a very bad investigator.
Why do they even call it Perry Mason? He's not a lawyer. He's not. I mean, there's nothing resembling really.
And it doesn't match the stories that were originally written or anything. He's not a lawyer. They have some characters that are in there. They have Drake, although he's very different. They have Della Street, although she works for some other lawyer. I don't know, because they thought it would make money. Because that's what you do. If you can slap a known label on something, it's great. But man, it's terrible. And it's getting a little dark and disturbing. I told Trish the other night, I said, if this show was just a little bit better, it would be too disturbing for me to watch. But luckily it's not very good, so it's not a problem. I'm like, I don't believe any of this. This is just awful. So it's fine. So it's cracking me up. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. So that's being fun. I feel like you checked out of this podcast like 10 minutes ago.
No, I've been listening.
You suddenly went.
Oh,
like no, you were. This was you, and now you're like.
Well, I've not been sleeping very good, so.
I'm still having a little bit of that. It's getting better, and I'm hoping the working out is doing it. You're still walking, right?
No.
How come? Oh, never mind. It's 1,000 degrees outside.
I don't know. Well, there's that. But yeah, I've noticed when I don't sleep very well, my resting face just looks like I'm dead. I mean, I might be perfectly happy and engaged, but people are like, "Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm fine. What's the matter? And the pattern is, if I'm not sleeping very well, that usually my face will just super, I don't know, relax or look. It doesn't look like I'm angry. It just looks like I'm, like you said, checked out.
Not paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
and I know it's not me because everything I say is.
No, I'm totally interested in whatever you're saying.
It's super, super cold. Yeah, you should try and walk because that physical activity has a huge impact on my sleeping.
Yeah,
it's starting to get better because I'm exercising again slowly. I mean, at this point, yes, I'm exercising, but I'm doing like a third of what I used to do on the treadmill because I have to work up to it. But even just doing crap around the house is sort of helping. So we have no plans for this weekend. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I don't
normally
think
we have a couple of things that happen on the weekends.
Yeah,
we play D&D. I meat up with my friends. I guess Sunday night we're probably meeting up with the neighbors in their backyard, but otherwise nothing. So I'm very excited.
Well, that'll be nice and relaxing.
Yes, I'll probably play a lot of Assassin's Creed. All right, we aren't gonna manage a question today because we had too much to say about Robert Stack. But that's just how that goes sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
He's a hell of a guy.
A hell of a ghost.
He's just like at that age and white that I just assume he beat his wife. I mean, there's just a whole group of guys that, like Robert Curtis and the guy who played Colonel Potter on MASH and stuff, who are known wife beaters. And I sort of lump like every white guy actor in that age bracket. I'm like, I just assume they beat their wives.
That's terrible.
But I know shit about Robert Stack. And it's not Robert Curtis. Yeah, is it Robert Curtis? The Black Sheep Squadron guy. Who is Boynton from Black Sheep Squadron? He was always punching all sorts of people. And, yeah. I don't know. Also, once again, I want to tell the world, go on to Amazon and look up RiffTrax Miami Connection. And if you hate RiffTrax and Mystery Science Theater, just look for a copy of Miami Connection. It's hilarious on its own. That movie is insane. It's amazing. I watch a review of a guy's channel who does reviews of bad movies, and he hates all of them, and that's like his thing, that they're all terrible. And he's very honest about it. And then he was super shocked to be like, no, I don't say this normally, but you have to watch this because it's hilarious. And I was like, you're not wrong. It's amazing. So check it out, people. Yeah, that's all I got, and we're way over time, and yeah. So listen again next week. I assume my sound was good because I'm still using the thing. I probably won't use the headphones overall. I don't know. It depends on what room I'm in. If I was in the other room, it wouldn't matter, but here I don't want to disturb Trish, so we'll see. But in the meantime, people, don't be like William's family. Be more safe. And stay cool, and write in themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. You can be anonymous if you want, whatever you want. It's cool. But send us stuff because we need that. Despite how this episode went, we do use that content. And then listen again next week because I don't know what we'll do if y'all stop listening. I don't. We're hanging by just a thread here, and that thread is made up almost entirely of the fact that there's an audience somewhere out there that gives a shit what we're saying. Well, gives a shit what I'm saying.
Won't you?
Thank you.